characteristic of my general sentiment. And I'm not gonna pretend this feeling will ever end, because I know that it just comes right back around. And it's nothing truly profound, it's just the way it is. And sometimes I think that what makes me brilliant is the fact that I understand the simplicity, but I also understand the all too easily complicated. We love to complicate everything that's simple. Everything that is complicated. We try to whittle it down and say, oh no, no, no. It's black or white, yeah, it's black or white, yeah, it's black or white, yeah, it's black or white. They just need somebody like me to explain everything. That's their problem. But my explanation doesn't fit this algorithm. You know? Because the internet doesn't want you to figure anything out. They want you to be an addict. Because the more addicted that you are, the more money they can make off you. The more insecure that you are, the more likely that you'll work for somebody that's not very good. And they probably understand what you're going through a lot better than you do. They're just manipulating you. So I was pretty bitter. Well, let's face it, I'm still a little bitter. But I was way more bitter when I was in high school. And so, of course, people that were equally bitter, they recruited me and they said, hey, you seem more like a liberal. True. Well, if you don't have a positive relationship with your family, they see that as a golden opportunity to get you to blame anybody but you. So much money they can make from every childhood that much and they fake. So much of your energy misdirected at something that'll never solve it, the core problem. It's making it impossible to get away from. The problem is always you, the problem is always you, the problem is always you, even if it isn't you, the problem is always you, the problem is always you. But there's no money in that, 'cause all you have to do is walk around and talk to something bigger than you. Just talk and talk and walk and walk and walk until you figure it out. See, that's free to do. That's why there aren't commercials about it. There's no advertisements selling that. Nobody ever is gonna tell you the stuff that Amy Gross will tell you, 'cause nobody's paying me to tell you these things. So if you're having a problem, baby, all you gotta do is get down on your knees. And I know if you don't believe, that's just fine. Pretend you do. Eventually you will. Promise. 'Cause he'll reveal himself to you, because you're seeking and he wants so badly to have you. You don't understand it until you see it for yourself, and you won't be able to deny it. So this is the problem. I just play and I play and I play and I play, and then eventually I don't know where else to take it. And then I just give up and then I do another song. Right? Right? Why not? Well, therapists are essentially playing God, because they're just sitting there listening to you, right? And then they're making these suggestions as to like what you should do. So they're trying to provide you with discernment. Now, if you read the Bible, you would need to pay a therapist. But I guess the problem is, interpreting the Bible correctly. A lot of people misinterpret it. And they do that shit on purpose. Because they're selling you something. They're selling you something about the Bible. They're selling you something about Jesus. These people cannot be trusted. Now, I'm not one to say like, oh, well, if you're making money, that just means you're bad. Because, people do have to make money to get by and all that. At least they're convinced of this. But I will say it's kind of obvious, based off of how much money people make, and how we're not allowed to talk about that, and we're not allowed to talk about the amount of influence that these people have, especially in positions of power. Universities,
hospitals, governments. You know, we're not allowed to talk about the influence that they have. We're not allowed to talk about all the money they make. We're not allowed to talk about their intellect or the mere fact that any mention of that is enough to get you canceled, or you're banned from being able to access certain businesses or using certain payment processors or whatever. And then people will call you all kinds of names all because you just mentioned something, you know? I mean, the internet's here to expose the way that the world truly is. So, for that reason alone, I think that it can be a really good thing, because God is allowing these things to happen to reveal how evil these people are in hopes that we'll turn back to Him. But I think that people are making it really obvious, especially in regards to technology, the path that they're choosing. They're idolizing technology. They're puffing themselves up. Based off of their social media handles, which is so dangerous on so many levels. I mean, let's pretend that, like, God isn't real. Let's pretend that, like, the people that invented Facebook and Twitter, you know, were really awesome people. You know, they didn't have terrible intentions. Let's just pretend that every technological advancement is for our betterment. Okay, let's just pretend that. What it's doing to people psychologically is still really, really bad. You know? So if you subtract, like, the whole, like, good and evil aspect of it, it's still really bad. You know? So that's usually what I mention. Because, you know, when I start talking about Satan and idolatry and things like that, it's like I lose people because they don't understand the language that I'm speaking, because they don't have that same worldview, you know? But if you look at people that, like, can't look away from their phone, like, they literally can't. I guess they think they're gonna die if they don't stare at their phone. I mean, they probably will, honestly. They'll probably, like, melt or, like, evaporate or something. I don't know. But if you look at people that are so obsessed with the technology that they have, that they can't, like, tear themselves away from it for, like, 20 fucking minutes. They can't even have a conversation with somebody. Everything that they do revolves around that. How could you possibly make a case that it's a good thing for society when it has that level of an impact on people? And why would you not care? I mean, the technology has just proven how, like, most people don't give a shit about anything. And they're really not paying any attention. They might claim that they are because, oh, they see what's happening with immigration and the demographic changing, and, oh, they see what's happening with feminism and, like, all this stuff with the LGB, whatever the fuck. It's a direct result of feminism. It's communism. Feminism is a communist concept because Karl Marx wanted women in the workforce, because he rejected the traditional gender roles, because he was a whiny little bitch. They let Friedrich Engels take care of him his whole life. But anyway, It's like if they don't understand that the technology is always a backdrop of social progress, that social progress would not be made possible without dumbing down that particular society of the time. I mean, if they still don't see that, I really don't understand like how those people expect to get out of this. And it kills me because like I agree with all of these people like on all these other things, but because they don't see that, it's like they're just fucking worthless, you know? The root of the problem is the existential crisis that we have that enables us to not trust ourselves. You know, we would rather trust the whole system. We'd rather trust the products that were sold. I mean, that's why people rely on politicians. That's why they rely on the education system. That's why they rely on hospitals. You know, it's like, I get it. You don't have to explain to me, like, yeah, this is the way that society is structured and all that. But it would really do these conservatives some good to drop a hit of LSD. You know? It really would. If I were the government, I would totally force that. MK Ultra all over again. It would be like MK Ultra, but like positive. Like, I just want to revamp all these really bad decisions that the government's made and just like turn them into something really cool. You know? Is that possible? Is that possible, or am I a little too ambitious? I just think it's kind of ridiculous that like anybody thinks that we're gonna move forward. If they don't look around and see everybody doing this, how can they talk about Jesus when they don't even understand possession, dude? And I'm not saying that if you have a smartphone and one of those Apple Watches and your little earbuds, I'm not saying that you're possessed, but I'm saying that it's like so much easier for them to do that, dude. And you should thank God that you're conscious of that sort of thing. Because most people are not. And that's why it's wrong. Dude, I just read something. Let's read it. Wisdom of Solomon. Still in the Wisdom of Solomon. But right here, it's talking about the use of wood in relation to idolatry. But what was made by human hands itself is accursed, and so is he who made it. He because he made it, and the perishable thing because it was called a god. For equally hateful to God are the ungodly man and his ungodliness, and what was done will be punished along with him who did it. Therefore there shall also be a visitation upon the idols of the nations, because though the wood was part of God's creation, it was made into an abomination and became a stumbling block for the souls of men and a trap for the feet of fools. For the invention of idols was the beginning of fornication, and the conception of them the corruption of life, for neither were they from the beginning, nor shall they be forever. For by the vainglory of mankind they entered the world, and therefore their speedy end has been planned. So God's basically saying, look, if you're going to do all this, fuck you. Okay? Like you just wrote your obituary. I think that's what that means. I don't know. You tell me. Though the wood was part of God's creation, it was made into an abomination and became a stumbling block for the souls of man and a trap for the feet of fools. So, people can invent things and they can be used for good. But if they cause most people to stumble, they're bad, okay? And so that's why I think that the smartphone is the Antichrist, because so many people make all kinds of excuses for it. All these Christians make excuses for it. It's literally possessing everybody that uses it, and you're making excuses for it. Like, how could that not be an Antichrist, dude? It's the exact opposite of love. It's the exact opposite of personal growth and spiritual enlightenment. So, I've heard a lot of people talk about the Illuminati recently. The Illuminati, Freemasonry, all that, secret society. I mean, Freemasonry isn't really that much of a secret society, but its involvement in the government is, okay? So, this false illumination, that's what the Illuminati is all about, okay? It's all about getting onto that same level as God. And not for like a positive reason. I mean, they might disguise it that way. But anything that involves child sacrifice is probably not positive, okay? Rule of thumb. But that's what it reminds me of, is like this false illumination, this false knowledge. Like, you think that you're better off because you have this smartphone, but you're actually worse off because now you're relying on the phone for so many different things rather than relying on yourself. And instead of, asking somebody for directions, you rely on your GPS, and your GPS leads you astray. So, technology, I don't want to say that it prevents us from being able to access ourselves, the relationship that we have with ourselves, the relationship that we have with our fellow human beings, but it definitely puts this wall between us. So I don't understand how anybody could rationalize that. Like, look at what it's doing to everybody, dude. Like, the ends do not justify the means. Like, of any pro that you could list in regards to the technology, there's at least 25 cons for that particular pro, okay? It's not worth it. But the fact that people are so quick to justify that just proves that they've chosen the Antichrist.